This meeting is now being recorded.
So this is great if you want to review this after, share with colleagues, or if for folks who were unable to join us this afternoon. So everyone should be seeing a nature scene right now, probably a tree, maybe a mountain. In a few moments, you'll see the slides when the presentation begins. If you're having any difficulty at any point with the technology, feel free to send me a message by clicking the arrow next to CLPHA host. You can also send me an email at abra@clapha.org. I will keep an eye on that. And throughout the presentation, we will leave time for questions at the end, but if you think of something, you don't need to remember it and save it till the end. You can either put it in the public chat, which is in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, or you can click on these two Q&A chat bubbles in the top sort of upper right middle of the screen. The only difference is that everyone sees the questions in the public chat and only the presenters see the questions in the Q&A. Either way is fine, and we encourage you to ask any questions that you might have. So before I turn it over to our Education Working Group facilitator, Kathy, to introduce the speakers and herself, I just wanted to give a reminder that registration is now open for our 2018 summit. So I know some of you who are on the line have come to this event in the past. We'd love for you to come again. Excited for new folks to come. And as always, this event is most useful if you attend with your partners. So whether that's a school or a school district or an after-school program, maybe it's a university, and that's both folks that you have an established partnership with and those that you want to try to have a deeper partnership with. So I've gone ahead and put the link for registration and more information in the public chat in the bottom left of the screen. It's going to be May 3rd and 4th in Washington, D.C., and it's a free event. So we definitely hope that all of you and your partners can join us. And with that, I think I will pass it over to Kathy. Just a quick note that I did go ahead and put people's phones on mute just to minimize background noise. So again, if you have a question, please type those out so that we can minimize the time of knowing who's supposed to be speaking when. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Abra, and thanks, everyone, for joining us. Just very much so looking forward to the upcoming summit, and also just as a reminder that the housing is a year-round resource online. I know I've been able to start contributing to it and seeing other contributions as well. So just to keep that in mind, too, as we move forward, that there's both the summit, the online resource, and then these webinars as ways to stay connected and get good ideas moving forward. So without further ado, I want to make sure that we get some of those good ideas going, and we have both Kevin Van Loo, who is the city analyst, and Maggie Cooper, who is a city engagement manager, both from KaBOOM, that are going to be presenting here shortly as we're pulling up their materials. So we look forward to hearing more about opportunities for this session is focused on out-of-school time, but really focused on ways to connect our families and our communities, and particularly in this way through play. So without further ado, Kevin and Maggie.
Great, thank you so much. This is Maggie. We'll go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking, as we've already mentioned a little bit, about play in public housing. So why are we worried about play in public housing? So the basic problems that we see right now is that play is disappearing. We have a generation of kids that is playing less than any other generation, which we know is leaving kids unhealthy, unhappy, and falling behind academically. We could spend an entire session going over all of the issues that we see and the research that backs this up, but just to kind of hit on the highlights, we know that kids are getting less time to be kids. We know that recess time is being cut and screen time is going up. Obesity has tripled in the last 30 years, and 1 out of 3 kids is overweight. And I'm going to apologize. I am losing my voice a little bit, so if I pause for a second to cough, I sincerely apologize. Sorry about that. We know that only 1 in 4 adolescents is getting the recommended 60 minutes of play that they need to thrive. And we know that these kinds of consequences are devastating when kids don't play, especially in neighborhoods where kids don't have access to parks and playgrounds. We know that more than 80% of kids live in urban areas, and contrary 80% of Americans live in urban areas, and the percentage of kids in those areas is even higher. Of those kids in urban areas, about 15 million, or 1 in 4, are growing up in poverty. So, how this affects KaBOOM? Well, a little over 20 years ago, our founder, Daryl Hammond, read an article in the Washington Post about 2 siblings living in D.C., Aisha and Clendon. They were 2 and 4 years old. We were in the middle of a heat wave in D.C., and they went looking for a place to play. They found an abandoned car, got trapped inside, suffocated, and died. A Post writer, trying to make sense of the senseless tragedy, went searching for safe places that they possibly could have played in their neighborhood. That writer couldn't find a single playground within a 3-mile radius of their home. Meanwhile, the community and the city were all pointing fingers, but nothing was actually happening to improve the neighborhood for the children and families that lived there. So, Daryl was motivated. He was motivated to act. Not to create an organization, but really to solve a specific problem, working in partnership with a specific community to try to make life a little bit better for the kids living there. The kids clearly needed better access to play, so Daryl, along with a lot of other fantastic volunteers, built a playground. So, as you might imagine, play is the solution that we're going to talk a lot about today to the issues that we have just talked about. So we know that, that when kids play, we all win. And by building that first playground is how KaBOOM was born. So a little bit of background on KaBOOM. We are the national nonprofit dedicated to giving all kids, especially kids growing up in poverty, the childhood they deserve so that they can thrive. We work to bring balanced and active play into the lives of all kids in America. And we believe that our mission is pretty simple. We want to get millions of kids playing again, and we want to put play back where it belongs, at the heart of childhood. We know that the well-being of our communities starts with the well-being of our kids, and play is critical to that ability to thrive. And it's why every day our partners, city leaders, and volunteers come together to create great safe spaces for kids in all sorts of communities, from Charlotte to Chicago, Baltimore to Bakersfield. And together, we're making it as easy as possible for kids with the greatest need to play so they can learn, explore, grow, and just be kids. We inspire and enable local communities, governments, influencers, and companies to work together to protect and promote play across America. We do this by creating all types of play spaces, by inspiring and empowering play advocates, and amplifying a national play dialogue. Again, so that all kids get that play that they need to thrive. So in more than 20 years, we've worked with communities to build or restore more than 17,000 safe spaces for kids. Each is an oasis where a kid can feel valued and loved, where their potential is supported, nurtured, and celebrated. Since 1996, we've been knocking down barriers for play for the kids who need it by creating safe spaces that make it easier for kids to access that play. While we are turning an empty lot or unsafe or unused playground into a beautiful safe space for a community to gather and play, through our community build model, we are also helping them develop cascading steps of courage, a sense of ownership, and the momentum to continue to create positive change, all that starts with the beginning of that first playground. Together with our partners in play, we've reached more than 9 million children. And we bring, again, play to those that need it most. The majority of the kids that we serve are living in low-income areas. Across the U.S., and especially in cities, too many kids are missing out on that chance to play because of where they live and where they come from or how much their families earn. And for those kids living in poverty, play is hard to come by. And we have worked with motivated grassroots community leaders from all sectors. We've rallied more than 1.5 million people to make play a reality for kids everywhere. We know that our work is particularly critical to help communities come together. And at times when communities feel more disconnected and divided, we are able to provide a tangible way for individuals from all walks of life, CEOs of Fortune 100 companies to the grandmother of a kid who will swing for the first time in their life, to unite on a common purpose to make a positive difference where they are living. There are many ways that we work with communities. Three main ones we'll talk about today are through our playground builds, our creative play solutions, and Play Everywhere. So through our playground builds, we give two different types of grants. We have Build It with KaBOOM grants, which offer memorable employee engagement and brand awareness. And we work with community leaders, we work with funders, and we work with KaBOOM staff to lead a community through that process of building a playground. We also have some Build It Yourself grants, and those grants go specifically to communities who are already going through the playground building process, and we give them additional funds to really be able to finish the project. The second type of grant that we have are our creative play grants, and these are custom-built mobile sets that encourage creativity, communication, and collaboration through play. And then the third way that we give out grants is through Play Everywhere, and these give cities new ways to think about building family-focused spaces that can put kids first. So we'll talk first about our playground builds. So as you already heard, the beginnings of the story of our first playground build, and this is actually the first playground build you see on your screen. And we've been building playgrounds in partnership with under-resourced communities ever since. So how do we actually do this? It's pretty amazing to see a KaBOOM build if you've never been on one. We start to start building the playground. We have 6 hours, 200 volunteers-ish, 200-ish come together and build about a 2,500 square foot playground that transforms the community into a gathering place and serves the neighborhood for the next 15 plus years. It's a high energy, modern day urban barn raising that puts kids first. First, we guide the community through a 2 to 3 month planning process, which builds their capacity and confidence to create a better environment for kids. It starts with a design day where kids in the community design their dream playground. We ask them to draw slides, swings, monkey bars. We've seen our fair share of rocket ships and pools and lazy rivers and trampolines. Some of these things are very possible. Some of them are great imaginations. But the creativity is on full display, and kids are engaged because they're creating something of value, not just for themselves, but for their families and their community. So after design day, we have the build. The design process culminates with 200 volunteers, most of which with no special playground building skills, coming together to build that playground in about 6 hours. And when we show up the morning of the playground build, you come to a vacant lot. And it's so exciting at the end of the day, and then a few days later, once everything has settled, to come back and see the kids actually playing on that playground. As I mentioned also, we have our creative play products. So through our creative play grants, we have 2 products called Imagination Playground and Rigamajig that provide mobile playgrounds that can be moved from site to site and be used indoor and outdoor. We know that kids need to be active every day at homes and the communities, and one way we help them is through this idea of Imagination Playground. This loose parts playground of big blue blocks enables schools and community organizations to engage kids in creative play that is physically challenging, intellectually stimulating, and socially collaborative. It provides an innovative play opportunity that can be instantly activated anywhere at any time. Schools, community centers, museums, public parks, street fairs, offices. We've seen different types of sectors and organizations, schools all use the Imagination Playground in slightly different ways. We also grant out Rigamajigs, which is really fun to say. It's a large-scale building kit that's designed for hands-on free play and playful STEAM learning. It's a collection of wood planks, wheels, pulleys, nuts, bolts, and rope that allow kids to foster their creativity while learning 21st century skills. There's really no right or wrong way to put these together, and we really focus on the idea of building as being the goal, not the finished product. And the third thing that I mentioned was this idea of our Play Everywhere grant. So we're the only national organization that's really focused on creating these play spaces, playgrounds, mobile play, Play Everywhere, and everyday spaces. And we had sought-after experts on kids, equity, and the built environment that came together to channel our experience and know-how to help communities to make it as easy as possible for kids to access play. To spread the idea of integrating play into everyday spaces, we fund these Play Everywhere projects and empower leaders from the business, nonprofit, urban planning, and art sectors to come up with creative, replicable, and fun ways to incorporate play into more kids' and families' everyday spaces. And the idea is that we're turning everyday spaces into extraordinary places. Yes, it's a play on words. The word play is in the word place. Some of the ways that we've seen this happen are, here's an example of Urban Conga. It is out of New Orleans, and this is a rendering that they put together and then the reality. So what we're really trying to see is kind of creative and new ways of trying to bring kids to playful spaces. The next one you'll see now is the Rail Trail Symphony in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is an example that we saw, the I Play Miami in Miami, Florida. In this project, we had dead-end streets that were selected and vehicle traffic was closed in those areas, and now those areas are transformed into unique spaces to experience play. This is the Downtown Slides project that's in the city of Knoxville, near a parking garage where guests come throughout the year for concerts and children's events. And lastly, I want to mention that in February, we will be releasing a major project we've been working on for a long time called the Play Everywhere Playbook. And this will help guide communities to create play spaces throughout the community at bus stops, laundromats, sidewalks, health clinics, grocery stores, and more. So why are we talking to you guys? Why are we specifically interested in really identifying new and creative ways that we might be able to work with housing authorities? There's a couple answers to that. So we know that communities are stronger after a playground build with KaBOOM. We know that some studies that we've done have shown that 2 weeks after a playground build, planning committee members have an increased belief that they can make a difference in their community. We know that new playgrounds foster improved community relations and attitudes. And we want to continue to identify ways we can work with large groups that are going to have a large impact on the kids that need access to play the most. So we know that by partnering with housing authorities, we can continue to bring play to the youngest residents in your areas. And by bringing play to public housing residents, we are improving equity, creating social cohesion and community pride, and creating safe spaces for kids and families. The first we'll talk about is equity. We know that access to balanced and active play can contribute to healthy development, we can support growing minds and bodies, and provide vital opportunities for kids to learn how to solve problems together. If it's not easy for kids to seek out spaces to play in their surrounding neighborhoods, we need to bring play to where the kids are. And unlike other kids, research shows that kids growing up in low-income neighborhoods often do not have the bandwidth or the ability to stop by local playgrounds, or even worse, a local playground might not exist within the proximity of their school or home. And this is why ensuring that these kids have access to play in their own communities is so important. By by building play spaces in residential areas, KaBOOM is helping to remove those barriers to play and making it easier for kids to get outside, often within eyesight and earshot of parents and other trusted adults. And by working with housing authorities, we can reach an entire system of underserved kids. Second thing we'll talk a little bit about is this idea of social cohesion and community pride. So we know that play spaces are not essential only for kids' healthy development, but also critical to creating safe, connected communities. Social cohesion within a neighborhood, combined with a resident's willingness to intervene on behalf of the common good, accounts for more than 70% of the variation among neighborhoods and levels of violence. Research has shown that strong social networks correspond with significantly lower rates of homicide and alcohol and drug abuse. When people know and interact positively with their neighbors, they foster a mutual trust and reciprocity, leading to the development of social norms that make community violence unacceptable and reinforce parents' efforts to teach young children nonviolent behavior. And we know that these KaBOOM play spaces help foster these types of interactions. And then lastly, we know that perceptions of safety can be a major barrier to children getting the play that they need in low-resource urban spaces. And it's evident that if parents believe their communities are unsafe, then kids are less likely to be able to play outside. Community-built playgrounds and Play Everywhere projects become social hubs for families to gather, socialize, and take care of the spaces. With increased community cohesion, more eyes on the street, and positive activation, there can be a direct impact on the reduction of crime. And through our playground builds and Play Everywhere projects, we can engage your residents, create relationships and social cohesion, and increase safety. So now we'll talk a little bit about the examples that we do have. These are by no means all-inclusive, but just a couple examples that we've seen in the last few years of different ways that we've been able to partner with housing authorities. So first one we'll talk about is in Riverside, California. So the mission of the Housing Authority of the City of Riverside is to increase the quality and quantity of affordable housing units that are available to all members of the community. Using a combination of federal, state, and local funds, the Housing Authority has acquired dilapidated and foreclosed buildings in the Chicago-Linden community and rehabilitated and rented them to households at an affordable price point. They currently serve about 80 children in their Cocoa Palms and Llewellyn Lane apartments on a daily basis. The park and the community that should be a safe haven has actually become a place of endangerment due to gangs. And so a grant of Imagination Playground that we gave them provides a recreational outlet that doesn't jeopardize safety. And the Housing Authority sets this Imagination Playground up at community events. According to one of the housing project assistants, the Housing Authority has utilized Imagination Playground to unlock the creative spirit of the children who use the products. They believe that the children delve into the endless possibilities of what they could possibly create. Their goal is to use Imagination Playground as a tool to provide a safe means to increase community engagement and recreation, while also offering opportunities for children to learn and build on that idea of creativity. They like the extensive possibilities and that it helps the children transcend into healthier, safer, and more viable community members as adults, and children gather in the play area to develop problem-solving skills and teamwork. The Oakland Housing Authority is another group that we've worked with. They provide subsidized housing to nearly 16,500 families. As the largest landlord in Oakland, OHA serves a diverse community of neighborhoods throughout the city. Through their Department of Housing and Urban Development's Moving to Work program, they work with community partners and stakeholders across the city to develop and implement innovative solutions to the persistent issues of access to quality housing, enduring poverty, and a lack of opportunity in very low-income neighborhoods. Over the last year, KaBOOM partnered with Blue Shield of California and Disney to bring playgrounds to 2 different community groups for a total of 800 households that now have access to a new great place to play. And last, before I hand it over to Tori, I'm going to talk a little bit about a Play Everywhere project that we saw in Spartanburg, South Carolina. So the laundry room at Camp Croft Courts has become more attractive and interactive for the 96 families and roughly 200 children that live at the public housing complex in Hanover Place in Spartanburg. The 150 space now has brightly colored rugs and beanbag cushions, play mats, toys, puzzles, books, coloring materials, and activity areas that help with kids' sensory and development growth. Kim Moultrie, the City of Spartanburg's Park and Recreation Superintendent, said that the enhancements encourage children and kids to play together and learn while the family is washing and drying. She said that it's about planting a seed in children's minds that there are so many locations where you can play and you can think outside of the box. And Spartanburg received about $2,000, so a relatively small grant through our Play Everywhere Challenge that was done in 2016. And they're also working to have some innovative items on the inside and outside of the community, and this is something that they've really seen that is allowing parents and caregivers to kind of think like kids again, and they said doing laundry will never be the same. So now I'm going to hand it over to Tori, who's going to talk a bit about the work that the Houston Housing Authority has done on bringing play to kids in his community.
Great. Thank you very much. My name is Tori Gunselling. I'm the CEO of the Houston Housing Authority. And we were a recipient of a Play Everywhere grant. And what was neat is it's a very small grant, and a local university had actually partnered with us to get the grant, and I would say we got a lot of bang for the buck, and several ideas that were implemented we'll be using at other properties. You can see on the screen one of the things in the center. We had built this folding play stage that the kids could play on. That wound up being a great prototype, but it didn't have the long-term durability that it needed when the older kids would play with it. But the sidewalk art and the sidewalk ideas are some things that we thought were really neat, low-cost ways of improving our property. And a couple of the examples that you see are quotes. And the university hired a couple of high school kids from the property to do community engagement and have focus groups. And they all came up with these different quotes that we then painted onto the sidewalk. And when you're walking around, it was really neat to see these kids say, "Oh yeah, that quote from Michael Jordan, that was me. You know, that was the one I picked." And then next to that, you can see the chalk areas where we would just create blank canvases, basically, so that kids can use sidewalk chalk. And the resident council now keeps a steady supply of sidewalk chalk, so the kids can go out and be creative on the sidewalks. One of the other sidewalk things that we did was part of the focus group that we did with the kids. They said they wanted an area to race and to be able to do races. And so we took a long stretch of sidewalk and marked it off in 10-yard increments with a start line and a finish line so that kids could have a 100-yard dash or a 50-yard dash, and they would know how far it was. And it was neat to see the kids excited about their ideas becoming reality. I think that for us, the big value had really been the community engagement and talking to the kids and having the kids have an active role in planning what they would like to see. And I think a lot of times these kids just aren't listened to, and rarely do they see adults taking them seriously, taking their ideas seriously, and turning it into reality. One of the other cool things that we did on the sidewalks is disappearing ink, where you use concrete sealer to do patterns. And so when it rains, then these patterns appear, and the kids design the patterns. We got interested in the partnership because we had done a community-wide effort on improving our playgrounds. And the other picture that you see is an example of a higher quality playground piece of equipment that I had seen and my boys loved to play on at a county park that really wasn't accessible to kids from some of these neighborhoods. And so we made a conscious decision to kind of have that equity of why should all the cool toys be in neighborhoods that aren't in the neighborhoods where public housing is. And so we tried to install some new pieces of fun, high-quality equipment, as well as we've refurbished all of our playgrounds across our portfolio. But we have definitely seen the impact of the Play Everywhere grant with an increased level of kids being outside and playing creatively. And I think a lot of times we'll see kids outside and they tend to be not being creative and not necessarily having something to do, and they're always looking for something to do. And some of these low-cost ideas have been really helpful. You know, we've got the sidewalk chalk set up to do tic-tac-toe and other things, and the kids just have a lot of fun with it. So I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end or now if that's appropriate.
Great. Thank you so much, Tori. So we'll give a few more minutes for people to have any questions and type them up. And while we're waiting for additional questions to come in, I can hand it over to my colleague, Kevin, and he's going to talk a little bit about the work that KaBOOM has been doing in partnership with Baltimore City.
Thanks so much, Maggie. My name is Kevin Van Loo, and I work with KaBOOM, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about our relationship with the Housing Authority of Baltimore City. KaBOOM and the Housing Authority of Baltimore City formed a partnership together in 2017 to help build playgrounds at various Housing Authority sites across Baltimore. The goal of this partnership is to help address the gaps in services that HABC does not have much of. So a standard playground put in by HABC is typically around 1,000 square feet. It's really wonderful that HABC is able to provide this, but that amount of equipment just isn't very engaging for their use. So by partnering with KaBOOM, they were able to double the size of the playground. So while putting in a bigger playground might not seem like a huge deal for HABC, this is an opportunity to really reclaim a vacant space. So the first project we completed together was at a site called McCullough Homes. This playground is particularly infamous within the HABC community because it was heavily featured in the HBO show The Wire. So to be able to transform this area from something that was associated with drugs and illicit activity to a place that belongs to kids is incredibly powerful and provides a safe space for kids just to be kids. So in addition to being able to provide a safe space for kids to play, the KaBOOM process allowed HABC to engage with their residents in a different way. Through the KaBOOM process, there's an 8-week planning process that empowers residents to take an active role in planning for their playground build day. So this starts out with a design day where we have kids from the community draw their dream playgrounds, and then have the adults come together to help pick the components for the playground based on their kids' design. The adults then spend the next 8 weeks recruiting, volunteering, and securing in-kind donations to prepare for the event. They then help to build the playground during that one-day event that Maggie talked about earlier. So coming out of the build, when we debrief from this project, we saw just how involved the community was. Several of the moms in the community came up to our main point of contact and said, thank you so much for this, and they've already started a neighborhood group to help care and maintain for the playground. This was always a challenge for HABC, so it's really exciting to hear that through this process that residents now felt that they had a deeper connection to the space and more inclined to care and maintain for it over the long term. In 2018, we're hoping to scale this opportunity to more sites through the HABC network. We also plan on connecting with residents from the McCullough Homes area to their counterparts in other HABC sites to help foster a greater sense of community and to be able to provide better resources. Also happy to take questions, but we'll turn it back over to Maggie now to wrap us up.
Great. Thank you, both Tori and Kevin. So, as you've seen, we've done a lot of different projects in a lot of different cities with a number of different housing authorities. There's a variety of ways that we really work to bring play to kids. So happy to open it up now for questions and really encourage you guys to check us out, see if there's different ways that we might be able to brainstorm. Some of the conversations that you've heard came very organically, and maybe it was a situation where someone was interested in having a playground build, and then we figured out play everywhere might fit here, and do you have anything happening indoors, and where creative play might be a good solution. So a lot of our projects are not one size fits all, so a lot of conversations happen to make sure that what we're helping you guys do is exactly what your community really needs.
Great. Thank you so much, Maggie and Kevin and Tori. Just wanted to remind everyone, please feel free to go into the public chat or the Q&A to ask some questions so that we can best utilize this time.
And I think while we're waiting for some of those to come in, maybe Maggie or Kevin, if you can talk about the possibility of applying for grants.
Sure, yes. So as I mentioned, we have those three main different types of grants, the Play Everywhere, Creative Play, and Playground Builds. Depending on what type of grants we have available, different ones have slightly different cycles. For example, we're always taking applications, but I know that some like the Build It Yourself grant, those are granted out several times a year, whereas others are on a rolling basis. So to find out more, go to apply.kaboom.org, and that will bring you to, it'll walk you through the process. It's really the same application process for all the different types of grants. And then also, if you have any questions and you want to reach out to us, Kevin is probably the best point of contact, and you can contact him at Kevin Van Lieu, so it's KVANLIEU at kaboom.org.
Great. And I just had a question. I know that you went through it in your presentation. Can you talk a little bit more about the Play Everywhere playbook? And, I know you mentioned it'll be coming out in February, but will that have, for someone who's just learning about this or maybe sort of thinking about that, will that sort of, do you think that'll be a good tool to offer some ideas and ways to move forward?
Absolutely. So this playbook is going to be amazing, and I'm known for a bit of hyperbole, but it is going to be fantastic. It is so in depth, and it's so much information. But we are putting it together. It's all going to be available on the website, and so it'll be a tool that you'll go through. We'll have kind of executive summaries that we can get you a printed version, but it's such a large amount of information that it's going to all be on our website. It's going to be very easy to navigate from page to page, but it will have so much information about what is Play Everywhere, if a project is really going to be powerful and inspiring and impactful, what does it need to do when we talk about equity and we talk about, choosing locations, what are things that really need to happen when we talk about the idea of community engagement. People hear community engagement and can think of a variety of things, and so the playbook will really talk about how to really do that community engagement in a way that your project that you're helping design is something that's going to be owned by the community and going to be of value to the community. It'll talk about all sorts of different examples. There'll be tons of pictures. So that is something, we're happy as soon as that's released. We're happy to share out with the council, and then you guys can share out with other people. If you're on the webinar and you want to, again, email Kevin and get the first moment that it's released, we can also do that. So it's something that is really going to be helpful. We've seen about, at this point, we've probably had a little over 100 different projects through Play Everywhere that we have funded. So we've got a lot of great success stories, like Tori shared. We've got some examples of this was a fantastic idea. Also, like Tori mentioned, that you can have a pilot of something that when teenagers get involved might not hold up as well. And so, here's some recommendations about how to make this a little bit better. Lots of stories we can share from grantees that have already gone through these types of processes.
Great. Thank you so much. Any questions?
Yeah, and definitely we're happy to share any of that. So folks who, you don't remember to write down the email address, be on the lookout for me to be sharing follow-up details. I'll definitely send a follow-up when the recording of this webinar is ready, which will, of course, have the slides in it. But yes, happy to share that with the group. I think sort of going off what you were just talking about, Maggie, Tori, I'm wondering if you can maybe talk a little bit more about the process for the Houston Housing Authority to both apply for funding with KaBOOM, but also a little bit about how it's looked. I think you did a fantastic job of laying out the benefits that it's been for the residents and the agency for the children that you serve. So maybe a little bit more about what, if anything, this has changed for staff, residents, staff, things like that, just for the other housing authorities on the line to think about when they're hopefully trying to implement this in their community.
Sure. So I think applying for us was extremely easy because we didn't actually apply. The University of Houston did. They came to us and said, we want to apply for this grant, and do you have a location that you'd be willing to let us try some interesting ideas? And I was like, sure. So that was very easy for us. And I think what it did for us was, you had, it was the architecture school, and a lot of creative students and a professor kind of coming up with ideas and talking it through with the kids. And it's something that we're going to replicate. We're building a new development now. And once it's finished, we're going to sit down and do some of the same ideas and talk with the kids about, hey, how can we make, this new home of yours yours, and you can leave your mark on it. And for us, it opened our eyes to, I think we forget how much fun you can have on a sidewalk, or in a driveway. And my kids, used to love playing with chalk on the driveway, but it's the sort of thing where you have to message to the maintenance staff, hey, no, this is allowed. When the rain comes, it all washes away. It's not a problem. Don't discourage it. Encourage this sort of thing. And so that's been a little bit of an education process. I definitely think we did another playground project where we were trying to do some really innovative things with logs and kind of a natural-looking playground. And again, we ran into problems with some of the older kids who are hanging out at the park after hours who don't want to play. And, they started moving all of the logs around. And so, we had to go back and bolt the logs together. And these were hundreds of pound logs. We had no idea that somebody would go, oh, wouldn't it be fun to rip all this up? So I think being aware of your environment and how durable things need to be is one end of the spectrum, but the other end of the spectrum is the temporary things that can allow somebody to play, and then it washes away.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And Tori, you kind of spoke to it in that anecdote as well, but any lessons learned in terms of working between sort of resident services and property management through this process?
Yeah, so we had to make sure that the property management knew what we were doing. We didn't necessarily have them at the table signing off on things. It really was, it was more the executive office of I told the architects, hey, whatever you and the kids come up with, show me a final draft and I'll sign off on it. But then letting the property manager know, this is all approved. This is all okay. One of the other, fun little things that they did, like the Nerf basketball hoops, we tied a bunch of them up to trees and gave all the kids Nerf balls, and then they could play basketball in the forest. And you could see the property managers just kind of scratching their head going, I don't think this is a good idea. But they understood that it was approved and something that we wanted to encourage.
That's great, and it definitely helps to have a leader like you at being able to, approve those things and communicate that message, because I think that is something that, in hearing a lot of this, I'd definitely like to learn those lessons to not learn them the hard way. So thank you.
So we have a few minutes left. If folks want to submit questions for our presenters, maybe you want to ask about something specific to your community and how this might be able to work there, or general questions about KaBOOM or play.
I mean, I think one of the things that I'm sure the other housing authorities also hear is there's nothing for our kids to do. There's nothing for our kids to do. We want a rec center. Well, a rec center is not in our budget, but this was. and it gave the kids something to do. And I think the community engagement or the kid engagement part of that, it was almost like an after-school activity for several weeks where the kids were working on different designs and different projects and working with mentors from the university. So it was a neat thing to do.
Well, maybe that folks will have follow-up questions after they've gone back and talked to some of their colleagues. Maggie, Kevin, were there final thoughts that you wanted to share with the group?
Just thank you guys for your time. You know, we love being able to have the opportunity to talk to new people about ways that we might be able to partner together. And, you know, again, partnerships with us can look like grants. They can look like deeper conversations about long-term partnerships. I mean, there's a variety of ways that we really want to work with you guys to continue to bring play to kids. So, again, go to apply.kaboom.org to find out more about grants. And then if you want to have a deeper conversation, as I mentioned, Kevin's probably the best contact. And his email, again, is kvanlieu@kaboom.org. So thank you guys so much.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much, everyone.